Hello everyone. Today I have a treat for you. I'm sharing a summit interview from 2022 with the amazing Deborah Murtagh. Now we're talking about menopause, how to have more energy, and how to lose weight without the restrictive dieting. My name is Deb and welcome to Women Reinventing Midlife TV, where we aim to inspire women over 50 to thrive in a meaningful life that you deeply desire and deserve. Now, this interview with Deborah is fascinating. She's an innovator, researcher, author, and expert in whole foods nutrition and mind before body weight loss. After 30 years and 20,000 hours of clinical experience, she's the leading authority on the implementation of the ketogenic diet in the real world. Now, this is a fabulous interview with Deborah because she shares the story of her awakening, which was born out of the darkness and has led her to become the leading authority in her work. She shares powerful insights on how the metabolic switch works for our own health and wellness. And she also shares the main influences on the way we look and feel in this phase of life and how to keep weight off for good. She also gives us some simple and small modifications that we can make to reduce symptoms associated with menopause and maintain a healthy weight, avoiding serious illnesses so that we can really thrive in our second half. So I'm so excited to share this interview with you. So let's not waste any more time and let's go over and have a look. Excited to have you join us. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Deb. Deb, that's easy.
I know. Isn't it? And I know what a busy woman you are. So I feel really honored that you've joined us for this summit. And I know we're going to be talking about the big subject that is of so much interest to women in this phase of life, which is weight loss. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes around that as well. But before we do that, I'd love you to share a bit about your own transitional story.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I've been a weight loss coach for over 30 years now. So I started my career very young and, going down that road because I had a very clear, I guess I had almost like an awakening in my late teens. I really struggled with my own weight. From the age of about 16, 17. It was those hormonal changes for me. And I also grew up in a home for many years with a single mother. And my journey really was really centered around watching her. So she was kind of the typical woman in the 70s and 80s that would start a diet on a Monday, sabotage herself on a Wednesday, and then all of the emotional backlash of what a woman goes through when they, I guess, fall off the wagon. And then it was, right, I'm going to be good for the next few days and I'm going to start again on Monday. And then when I was around 13, when I was those early hormonal changes, I was taken off to Weight Watchers. And I think a lot of women might be able to relate to that grew up in the 80s. And so my journey with my relationship with my body and this ideal kind of body image. I was a girl that was gaining weight. I was actually considered the fat friend in high school. And I was probably 30 kilos overweight in my teens, bigger than I am now. And that was a real emotional journey. We grew up with the food pyramid. We grew up, having 6 to 11 servings of grains every day. Sugar was everywhere. It was the low fat phase for people, low fat, high carb, which now we know through the research is the opposite to what we should be doing. And so I really, really battled. And I wasn't just battling with my body weight, it was what it was doing to my inner self, my inner critic, what I would say to myself when I looked in the mirror. And I know, most women can relate to that. And so I think somewhere along the line, watching my mother's struggles all throughout my childhood, there must have been a pivotal moment where I just made this key decision because I just couldn't understand why she couldn't stick at the diet. She was a nurse and a very well-educated woman. She knew exactly what to do. So it wasn't a lack of education for her to lose weight. It was more around her internal battles and understanding that there's it's as much of an emotional journey as it is just eating food. I would say that food is probably 10% of it at the most, and 90% is kind of mindset, psychology, dealing with our traumas and unpacking our baggage as we go on that weight loss journey.
And you obviously noticed all that through your own experiences as well.
Absolutely. I was dealing with quite severe clinical depression around the age of 16, 17. And anyone that's really had clinical depression will relate to this. I just felt like I was being sucked into a black vortex. And it really was a lot of kind of really not loving myself, not feeling accepted or understood by the world, feeling completely isolated and alone. And this probably went on for a couple of years. And I remember going to bed early just so that I could cry. And I would get myself in the fetal position and cry it out. And I remember one night there was a pivotal moment where I was literally praying to God to take me, and just telling myself, I want to die, I want to die. And I still remember it so vividly. I was going down this black vortex and literally praying to God. And something magical and almost miraculous happened in that moment. I remember seeing this tiny pinpoint of light at the bottom of that vortex. And when I saw that, it really, there's no other way of describing this. It felt like God kind of reached down in that vortex, grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and ripped me out. And my mantra changed to, there's got to be more to life than this. And that was really one of the key moments where my mindset completely changed. I knew that that it was what I was telling myself, and that really took me on this massive journey to really master weight loss. And I made all the same mistakes as most people, following all the conventional advice for many, many years, until I really figured out the secret, which was how we're metabolically fueled.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. That story, I had goosebumps when you were talking about it, and it was so similar to my experience when my father passed away just 3 years ago. I ended up in a black space, and up until that point I'd been coaching around business, and when that happened and I ended up in that black space, it was like a little pin of light that was directing me, you need to work with midlife women. It was incredible. It was the only thing that lit up out of the blackness. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. I've never heard anybody that said that same thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was a spiritual awakening. And so that's why I knew what my mission was, I guess, to help women not suffer with pain, to not go through what I was witnessing my mother and myself were going through. But also the recognition of it's not just the diet, it's how are we coping with the stresses and our triggers in life, and finding peace and actually coming back to a place of authentic self-love.
I agree 100%, and that reflects over all aspects of life, doesn't it? Not just our health and wellness and our weight. It reflects over all aspects of our life too. It has such a massive leverage. So weight loss for women in this phase of life, because it's a big topic, and I know that so many of us end up with that expanding waistline in this phase of life. Even the tiniest of us, we tend to get bigger around the middle. And I know for me, I have to be very, very careful about what kind of food I eat, how I exercise, all of that kind of thing, to be able to, manage that. So, and to feel comfortable to wear the same clothes that I've always worn. So what is it that causes women to have that weight gain in this phase of life?
There's a number of causes, but the major one here is that I think that life catches up. Now, what I mean by that is, when we are fueling our bodies with carbohydrates, it's probably easier if I just explain what the metabolic shift is that happens. Then I can put this into context for you. So when we eat our standard diet, and particularly the ones that we're told to eat, the food pyramid and 3 meals a day and snacks and things like that, what happens is that we digest that food. That food then converts into glucose in the blood, and then the pancreas releases the hormone insulin in response to that rise in blood sugar. Now, insulin's job is to bond with the glucose and transport it to the cells in the body. So insulin is very much like a door knocker of the cell. It will come up and it will attach to the receptor sites. It's like open lock, and the cells then absorb the glucose. And then once the glucose is inside the cells, the mitochondria, they're like little caterpillary things, convert that glucose into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And that is our energy source that fuels our entire body. It's a bit like the power grid, and keeps the cells alive and healthy. Now, when we are fueled that way, and now I would argue that we're not meant to just be fueled that way, and I'll explain why in a couple of minutes. But when we continually fuel our body that way, what happens over time is that most meals are too high in carbohydrate. There's too much blood sugar in each meal. And so what happens is that the insulin will continue to try and knock on full cells. The cells will go, no, I'm full, go away. And so what happens is glucose will take that excess energy and convert it into a fat cell and store it for later use. So this is what causes weight gain primarily. Now, what happens when we get to midlife? We have a drop in estrogen. And once our estrogen starts dropping, the body's very clever, and it's trying to say, hey, we need to balance all of this out right now. So what it does is it puts the body into a store fat mode. It signals the body to say, hey, we need to store more fat, because fat actually releases a type of estrogen in the body. So this is what's going on. The body's just trying to kind of balance its hormones. Now, when you combine that with a lifelong kind of high carbohydrate diet, insulin resistance really turns a big tipping point. So everything's kind of upregulated, and we're literally in our body in a store fat mode. So there is an alternative to that, and this is I'm a ketogenic diet expert. I've been in this field for 30 years, and this is where my medical research side has gone, and primarily in the area of neurological diseases, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and things like that. So not just weight loss, but what happens is if we actually change the way we eat and make a few modifications, and we reduce the amount of sugar intake and refined carbohydrates and ultra-processed foods, what happens is our blood glucose stays very low. And if we drop that just to the ideal point, there won't be enough glucose in the body at that point to fuel every cell. So what happens is the body is incredibly intelligent, and it goes looking for a second fuel source. So it then goes to fat cells, and it will actually take those fat cells to the liver and produce something called ketone bodies. Now, your body always has two fuel sources. Doesn't matter whether you're what you're eating, you're going to have some ketones in your body at all time, and you're always going to have glucose. So what happens when we lower the amount of carbohydrate, the body flips into what's termed nutritional ketosis. Your body is now able to clean up the fat cells. It starts with the liver, which is incredible because you can reverse fatty liver within a couple of weeks eating this way. So it will clean up the liver first, then it will go to the stored fat cells. And the beauty of that is that when it is absorbed by the cells to produce this adenosine triphosphate, it no longer requires insulin. So insulin's kind of removed to the side, and insulin resistance is arguably one of the major factors in across the board in metabolic diseases that we're seeing now. We're seeing with Alzheimer's, it's potentially a form of insulin resistance of the brain. We're seeing different organ systems being affected by this. So really looking at, what is it that we're eating? Where are we going wrong? Why was it that it was not until the 70s and 80s where we saw this dramatic rise in body mass index, and which is interesting because that's when the gyms all started opening as well. But really what it is, we've increased our sugar intake about 3,000% over the last 100 years. And our bodies are just not designed to be fueled constantly with glucose. babies are born in this metabolic state. They're born in nutritional ketosis. They're born burning ketones as fuel. And we know that ketones are the preferred fuel source for the brain. And this is why people, when they're in that metabolic state, have enormous amounts of energy and mental clarity. It takes a couple of days to get into that state, but it's women, all around the world tell me all the time, I woke up and I can see the light. It's like the curtains have been drawn. I have an enormous amount of energy. And not only that, the hunger hormone ghrelin is down regulated. So if your body needs fuel, what's it going to do? It's not going to signal the brain to say, go and eat that cake or, grab that pie or that bag of crisps. It's actually going to just go straight to the stored fat and burn it. So you have a very stable energy level across the day, your hormones stabilize, and things just normalize. So I really believe that we are designed to be metabolically flexible. We're supposed to be burning these two different fuel sources. However, with modern diets, particularly over the last 50 years, we're not having that metabolic flexibility anymore. Our ancestors would have had it though.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to get the body to do anything artificial. We're trying to restore its body memory to this incredible flexibility that it has.
That's absolutely fascinating. That's fascinating. So, just the fact that our body knows what to do when we start to feed it the right food, we have the most incredible vehicle, don't we? The most incredible vehicle, and it knows exactly how to get us from A to B. But if we're not giving it the right fuel, and what's really interesting there is that the part that glucose plays in this as well. And I've noticed, I steer clear of processed foods and all of that sort of thing. But I've even noticed a difference if I eat too many potatoes or, too much sweet potato. And I have to go, no, I can only have a small amount, because it's the same thing, isn't it? It's got that carbohydrate content.
Well, what's really interesting for your audience to understand here is 30% of women don't get any symptoms through menopause. So it's not as if, these life changes are a given and necessary, and you just have to accept it. It's not the case. So I became really interested in, what are these 30% of women doing? I'm about to turn 50. So, I've had no symptoms of menopause. One would hope I wouldn't. And I'm certainly not dealing with that, because I studied, about a decade ago, what are women doing that are just breezing through menopause? And really what it came down to were a number of different lifestyle factors, but we have to go low carb. I mean, I'm a big believer that a low carb diet, that carb sensitivity is driving this insulin resistance, which is really kicking into high gear around this time. And there's other there's other things we could get into, but we don't have the time, like the hypothalamus, which is your central processing unit in the brain that regulates homeostasis. We sometimes see some sort of inflammation happening in there, and that affects all of the nervous system as well. So basically, years of stress and lifestyle changes kind of all catch up with us. So it's not just one mechanism. You have to take a holistic approach. But ultimately, if you feed the body the right things and you learn how to create this metabolic flexibility, your body is in just an incredible state to just manage itself. So the body is great. It's always trying to create this balance of homeostasis, but if we're giving it the wrong information, as in the wrong foods, it actually can muck us up a little bit, which we see as well.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and yeah, the wrong information through mindset as well, which is another part of it, that one of the main parts of it that you focus on. And I love how you mentioned, that we had that metabolic flexibility hundreds of years ago, but now we don't have it as much. And it's interesting because 100 years ago, we would use that fight, flight, freeze response for the right reasons, which is what, but if we're just using fight, flight, freeze, for a deadline or having too much to do, then we're in that permanent state of stress, which has a huge effect.
That's right. And if we have high cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which most people are kind of having these, fluctuations of cortisol across the day, then that's going to bump up this insulin response as well. So it's a kind of a little bit of a recipe for disaster, but it's very easy to fix. It's not hard to fix. So that's the good news. But mindset, is huge. And, it's probably at least 90% of what I teach now in my programs. So really getting into the psychology of weight loss, understanding our different archetypes, the different personalities, how we respond to stresses. And, we could be going along life perfectly well, we're sticking to our diet and then sticking to our healthy eating plan. I don't really like using the word diet, but we're on the, we're nailing it, everything's going well, and then something can happen in that day to trigger us. And if we don't know how to respond to those emotional triggers and how to process those things, then somebody is going to default back into their old programming, which is to turn to food potentially, to comfort or to create variety, or, there's a number of different reasons why people do that. But the average woman spends 17 years of her life on a diet. So this isn't just something that happens at this, our stage of life. It's, this is an ongoing process, I think, for women and even young teens today with, so much pressure with Instagram and social media.
Yes, yeah, and that's a recipe for disaster for later years too. When you get into that system, I would call it, that process, that habit of turning to social media, because it's another form of making ourselves feel better, or we think, until it's overused and then it doesn't. Same sort of thing as food. Yeah, interesting. So what are some of the mistakes? You've mentioned a couple that the mistakes that women make.
I think there's a holistic kind of range of things here. I think also often for midlife, women are coming into a different life phase. There's we often have, the midlife crisis, which isn't just about our bodies. It's about, who am I? What is my place in the world? Now that my children have left home, I've just become a grandmother not so long ago. And that's a whole new life phase as well, and a lot of people struggle when their children leave home, for instance. So who am I now? What is my purpose? What am I going to do for the next half of my life? So, there's a number of almost spiritual questions, I think, that arise around this time too. For other women, it's they might be settled into a fabulous lifestyle, so there's a little bit too much wine in the evenings, and a little bit too many dinners out and entertaining. Now, those things are totally acceptable. One of the big things that I teach is, how do we live in the real world? And how do we create a healthy relationship with food and even wine and things like that, so that we're not eating those things, feeling like we're doing something bad and then dealing with guilt and shame afterwards. You have to have a complete flexible mindset as well to be able to approach a healthy lifestyle. And I think that's definitely a mistake that a lot of people are making. They kind of say that they're either on the wagon or off the wagon. And I don't actually think there is a wagon. I think that the wagon is just there's no wagon. It's an interesting metaphor that kind of brings in a deeper sense of psychology of, I'm being good or I'm being bad. Yeah. And I really don't like women using those things, because you're doing life. So it's, so there is no wagon, it's called life. And we just have to learn how to cope with the dinners out or the conferences away, or when we're traveling and things like that, and actually enjoy our life. We're here to enjoy things. We're here to experience joy and happiness and inner peace. And if we're constantly battling in our mind about what I should eat or what I shouldn't eat, or what I should, all these sorts of shoulds, that can create an enormous amount of anxiety for a lot of women. And they're never going to be able to stick at a healthy program long term. They're not going to find those lasting results. When we've got a 2% success rate past a few years in the weight loss industry, it's despicable. And that is because, most diets out there are saying, this is what you need to do and you need to stick at it. Yeah. And, but that's ridiculous, because what is it when the mindset is, I'm now off the wagon, going back to what I experienced in my own home, witnessing growing up. I'm either on the wagon, I've stuffed it, I've done it now. And then we kind of make all these excuses, there's 1,000 excuses that we make to justify kind of not just, okay, I've eaten that, probably shouldn't have, fine, good, bless myself, give myself permission to, forgive myself. And then the very next decision I make, I do better. And that's a progress. A weight loss journey is not a straight line. Transforming our relationship with our bodies and our souls is not a straight line. It's a couple of steps forward, it's a step back. And, the successful people just keep taking another step forward, despite how many they take back in their life. And I think that's a really important thing to know, because, there's usually over 100,000 women a year go through my program. So, one of the things that I'm constantly saying to my communities is this is about self-love. This is about nourishing, the deeper parts of yourself and coming from that place, because when you authentically love yourself and create that authentic relationship and really, kind of figure some things out in life, which this life phase is an awesome time of life to do those things, then you're going to put the right food into your body. You're not going to, you don't love yourself by eating cake and sugar and chips and binge eat, all the crap that we, that is just filling our supermarket aisles with now. That's not an act of authentic love. An act of authentic love is actually feeding the body the right cells, because I want to live the longest, healthiest life I possibly can. And, one of the sayings that we have is that we want to live long, die fast. I'd like to die in my sleep, but have a healthy life till then. But we know that most women from the age of 50 are on at least two pharmaceutical medications at this point of life. And that starts accumulating over time. And then so right now, we're not living longer, we're dying longer than ever. And that no one needs to be like that. Don't you want to be healthy and fit and enjoy the grandkids if you have them, or, enjoy traveling and doing all those amazing things? This is the right time of our life. We should be fit and healthy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And that is my wish, that I'm fit, healthy, strong, flexible, right up until the day I take my last breath. And that's my intent. And that my intent guides me in my daily habits. And I think that's a really important part of the mindset too, isn't it? It's kind of, I love what you were saying about filling your body with all this junky food, but sometimes, you need to be flexible if you're going out for dinner or that you're at a party. Sometimes I think, I really like a piece of chocolate, and I get some good quality chocolate, but I don't beat myself up for it.
I have chocolate in my program. That's the one thing that most women don't want to give up, but it's knowing what chocolate to have and how much to have.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And if we go and if we start beating ourselves up and blaming ourselves for doing it, then we're going to have more chocolate to feel better. So it's a never-ending habit. It's a never-ending cycle if we don't sort out what's going on with the inner critic.
I think for a lot of women, particularly women that have really battled throughout their lives with their weight and their self-image and body image, it's a lot of what I see for a lot of women, not all women, but a lot of women, is the shame. There's a deep sense of shame related to their size and feeling inadequate. So this is, a big part of the psychology that I teach, is how to make peace with all of that, so that we're not carrying that. And it's when you've tried and failed and trialed and failed throughout, for the last 30 years or 40 years for a lot of women, we're not going to get anywhere if we stay in those shame cycles. So, and the weight loss industry has set everyone up for failure. I really, really believe that. It's not about the diet. My program, I believe, does have the best diet in the world. It's clean, healthy eating, it's whole foods, it's natural, but also your body's making these hormonal shifts so that your body can heal. So it's a very anti-inflammatory healing program. So you can have all of that in place. But if you don't love yourself, it's not going to last. You'll eventually come off, and you'll eventually go back to your old emotional programming, your own psychological programming, and all those habits that got you there in the first place are going to come back in. So we have to look at the brain. We have to look at, your brain's still pliable. We have neuroplasticity. We can create new connections in the brain to create new habits that become automated. And you've just got to know the right things to do and when to do them and practice those. This is where I believe community is really important, having a supportive community of like-minded people going through the same journey as you, so that you're not feeling alone. Because one of the things that I know to be true is that, women don't generally talk about their weight loss journeys, even with their friends, let alone their family or their communities, because of the, hey, I've failed so many times, I don't want to admit that I'm doing this again. So you have to find your tribe. You have to really find that support. And we know that women that have support are hundreds of times more likely to succeed, particularly long term.
I'm a big believer in that too. It's really important to find like-minded women, a community that are all wanting the same thing, that they all, wanting to work through the same thing, where you're much more likely to share what you need to share to actually gain the results you want, to actually experience the journey that you want.
My mission on this planet is to help women transform their lives. That's why I'm on this planet. And I can't have a bad day in my life. I'm really fortunate. When I wake up, my team have a thanks thread and Messenger, and I wake up every morning and I look at all the testimonials that came in that day. And so I wake up generally in tears of gratitude, seeing just incredible transformations in lives. And often husbands join as well, and so it's just phenomenal. And then how those women might go on to lose 40, 50, 60 pounds or even kilos, and then how that affects all of their communities. So I believe that if we help women and empower them, then that's all going to filter out into their communities as well.
So true. Like, we have so much more influence on our environment and our community than we really give ourselves credit for. So yeah, I love what you do. And I think that's why we connected so well, because we have similar visions and similar missions. Thank you so much, Deb. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Deb. And it's incredible what you're doing for women and in your community. So I honor you for that. And thank you on behalf of everybody that's participating.
And thank you for joining us. I know that you would have found that conversation as fascinating as I did, and found some really great tips in there for your own health and wellness. Now, any links that you need to connect with Deborah, you'll find in the description notes underneath this video. And please remember to like the video, share it, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified as soon as the next video comes out. Lots of love to you, and I'll look forward to connecting next time. Bye-bye.